Today on Parts Hold, we have Jacob, a guest coming in to talk about running a wholesale operation that you can describe as nothing but world class. We are also going to talk about some of Cliff's deepest, darkest secrets, which I think it's always great when we get into that. This is a really, really in-depth episode. You're going to want to have a pen and paper with you because you're going to take a bunch of notes. And if you're really looking to transform your wholesale operations, this is some stuff that you need to listen to. So strap in. I'm Christian Lafferty. That's Cliff Honeycutt. And welcome to Parts Hold.
Here to fill the order.
Hello, gentlemen. How are we all doing today?
I'm fantastic. How about you?
I'm doing great. So, Cliff, I'm going to let you do the intros because we love having guests on Parts Hold, and Jacob is somebody that we've anticipated having on the show. You guys are going to kind of see. I'm going to let Cliff do the official intro, but let me just prep that Jacob actually is what I would call a wholesale genius. Maybe I'm understating that a little bit, but he is really excited today about our topic and giving you a little bit of a heads up on who he is. I'm going to turn it over to Coach Cliff. So take it away.
So Jacob is a parts manager of a store in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we've been competitors and we've been coworkers. And I would say another side of that, we've become great friends throughout the whole process, even as competitors and strong competitors. And Jacob is, I would consider him a genius. I would consider him a super bright, shining star in the world of parts, has made some great moves, has been very successful, and runs a tight ship. Is looked highly regarded by his peers, by his coworkers. It's super exciting to me to introduce him to everybody out there and to have the opportunity to sit and have this discussion because we've had it multiple times together. And I can't believe I said all that nice stuff, but nonetheless.
Thanks a lot, Cliff. That's enough of that. Jacob, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. And I think probably the thing I'm most excited about is, and take a second if you need to, but could you go ahead and just tell me the most embarrassing story you know about Cliff? Let's just kick it off like that.
Well, me and Cliff, we have fun, but we're very competitive. So I saw that he was starting to slack in his working out ways, and I was going to the gym during lunch. So I invited him. I said, be my guest. He ended up joining. He wanted to work out legs one day, gets on the leg press machine, realizes he does not know how to put it back to where it's not going. So basically, he's stuck on a leg press machine. Granted, it's only 90 pounds. I mean, it's not much weight, but thank God that 80-year-old lady who knows how to work it was not far away from us, so she helped us out. But I thought about leaving him for an extra 5 minutes, but I knew we'd have to get back to work, and I didn't want to have to carry him. So,
and just for clarity's sake, sorry, Cliff, this is my time with Jacob. So the guy amongst the three of us, the only one that has an action hero, got stuck on a leg press.
Yeah, you don't skip leg day, so I guess that really proves that. I mean, had he been doing legs, I figured he wouldn't know how to do it. He's a little older than me too, so I figured he's seen this machine before, but I guess not.
You can't skip leg day because he's been stuck on the machine for the last 2 weeks. He's still there.
It is so embarrassing that it happened because just the way it happened. Best I remember, we had done several exercises up until that point, so legs were shaky at that point. And you've got that weight on there and you can't figure out how to lock it out and you can't find anybody to help. And just to be truthful and honest, I don't think Jacob was trying to help.
So that's a great story. I would say though, like in your defense, Cliff, is so I go to the gym out here and 80% of the machines I look at, I'm like, I have no idea what that thing does, what part of the body it's supposed to work. So I just don't do it. So kudos to you for trying a machine that you had no idea how it worked. But Jacob, tell us a little bit about your story. Like, how old were you when you got into the business?
So I was a fresh out of high school, was going to church with a guy who was a service manager at our dealership, and he said, "I'm looking for a reporter." I said, "You know what? I'm going to college. This would be great. Part-time job, flexible schedule." So I come in, I'm a porter in service, I'm a porter in sales, which is great because, I love building relationships and getting to know people, getting to know the business. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going pretty good. Well, I think you can only mop the shop so many times before you say, hey, that delivery driver job looks pretty good in parts. So fortunately, one of my buddies was working at parts and he said, you know what, we need a delivery guy. So he brought me over, started doing that, continued to go through college, ended up finishing college, was a counterman. And he came to me with an opportunity. He said, hey, I think we have enough business that we can have you do just a wholesale role. And I think around that time we were doing about $6,000 worth of gross. And I think after our first year of me doing it, we got to about $20,000 worth of gross a month. So, you know,
So
put
you
me on a good,
tripled it?
yeah, put me on a
And
good pay plan and
that's just wholesale.
just
That's
wholesale.
amazing.
Yeah, just wholesale. So I felt like Jerry Maguire. I was driving down the road, calling people on my way home, like passing body shops. And, granted, I'm not as old as Cliff, but this is almost 18 years ago. And so I'm looking everywhere. I've got these call logs that I create. I'm like double checking. I'm a very organized person, so I want to make sure I don't call the same person twice because you got to have different pickup lines is what I call them. But yeah, getting used to cold calling, just being comfortable with being uncomfortable. To be honest with you, is the best thing to do. So I did that, and then in 2014 had an opportunity to become the parts manager. Learned a lot. Used Cliff was a great mentor, to be honest, because I know he had a lot of experience, and we worked really well together, even as competitors. So we had a pretty good relationship when it came to that. And so took over there, and here we are now. And I think we just did $80,000 last month in our wholesale department. So I would say
Oh
things
my
are
gosh.
trending upwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really impressive, and I think that and kind of flipping this back to Cliff, like I'd love to hear what are a couple of things that you learned from Jacob, and I think that the overlying lesson here for all you parts managers out there listening is the buddy system really works, right? Like you got to be able to collaborate with people and have their best interest in mind while you're kind of giving the advice or maybe taking the advice or whatever it is. It's like it's all about the other person in the relationship too. But I love that you guys had that. I think that's amazing. But yeah, Cliff, you want to talk a little bit about kind of from your side, like what are some things that you picked up from Jacob?
Yeah. So one of the things I think his tenacity to grow the business early on was super evident when we were already existing as far as a name. The brand was completely different. Um, and that could go into a whole nother story. But I think his tenacity to grow the business was super impressive to me because we had to go on the outskirts of our area and further out because he had locked down everything with inside. So I think tenacity would be a word that I would describe him in the growth of his business. The other thing that I found more so I found it out when we were competitors, but I found it more so when we were coworkers. Is the systems he was just talking about having the systems and the things that he had in place and had put in place to cover it in every facet of it. So I was always super impressed by that. And to be as young as he is a great manager of his people.
That's cool. That's not a stretch because when you think about great leaders, right? They have the vision. Organization, I think, is something that typically comes with really, really good leaders. So even in like 5 minutes of listening to Jacob talk, you can see that he's a really good leader just right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So, which we could probably talk a lot about his overall arcing, kind of like philosophies and belief towards running the parts department. But we have kind of a specific topic that we want him to expand upon today. What is that, Cliff?
I'm super excited about it. It's wholesale because we've talked about it multiple times, and Jacob and I have talked about it multiple times. It's there's some guys out there kind of dipping their toes in the water. This is an area I think you've got to jump in the deep end if you're going to do it. And I think we want to share some opportunities. Maybe I would say our top six opportunities to really lock down to really become successful. Jacob, I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, definitely is at least six great starting points. to focus on
Yeah,
if you want to be successful.
there you go. So if Christian, if you don't mind, we're going to jump right in and dive in this thing, and we're going to do what we just said and dive in the deep end.
Let's
Um,
do it. I got my Speedo on.
all right.
Yeah, there's an image you can't
I
get
don't.
rid of, right?
Nope.
I don't.
I wouldn't let you, Jacob.
Um,
Welcome to the team.
yeah. Welcome to Parts Hold.
Yeah.
So number one on our list of wholesale best practices is inventory management. And so, Jacob, let's just kind of talk back and forth about this inventory management because I have some philosophies on it. And I would love to hear your philosophies on it.
Well, I think that it's always evolving. You'll notice the manufacturer will change it based upon what demand is, what's working for them. I know that parts is the second biggest gross producer for Mobis, which is Hyundai. So that's a big focus on them. So especially going through COVID, they've gone through some changes, and you've seen those throughout the years too. I think just knowing what orders are available, order types are available to you. Are you utilizing those correctly? Do you know what they do for you? Stock order will get you percentage back for obsolescence. No other order does that. So it can be tricky, right? I have an option before 1 o'clock to regular order something, have it the next day for my customer, or do I put it on a stock order, get the 2% off of it, which is better for the company? If you're doing wholesale, I think turnaround time is so important to the wholesale business that you need to know which one you need to utilize. But there's a way to be cost effective with doing it too. So don't just do it for sake of doing it. Know why you're doing it. Be educated on why you're doing it. It's really communication with your customer. If you know they're not pulling that car in for say another 3 or 4 days, maybe you can get away with putting on a stock order. So it's really just communicating with your customer, know who you're doing business with, how do they do business. To me, is pretty important. But it goes beyond to me just ordering the parts. I think returning the parts with your inventory would be very important too. Kind of to have those processes in place that you've stated to the customer, because at the end of the day, it's the body shop that's going to communicate with the insurance company that pays those fees. So if you charge any fees, let it be known up front. We do a stamp to let them know, hey, if you have a big return on a special order, be fair about it. But this is the percentage you can expect to be charged. If you have a restocking charge, a lot of people are afraid of that. We've utilized that, and to be honest with you, we put it towards a freight account, and we always carry a credit in it. So it's going to cost you money to send it back. It's just about being fair, but being transparent to me is the biggest part of doing that. But there's certain things you need to stock. You need to look at your percentages. What is your fill rate? What's your net utilization on what it suggests for you to have? Are you accepting what it asks you to have? Do you place lost sales? Because there's three things that can happen. You sell a part, you place a lost sale, or you order a part. So, those three things, make sure you're doing one of three of those. Because if you manipulate the system, it can get you in trouble. But if you use the system like it should be, it can put you in a good place. So we do great on ours. We don't have obsolescence in our department just because we utilize those.
When you're talking about doing returns, right? So because I would like to. This is one of the areas that everybody, if you ask them about wholesale and getting into wholesale, and even thinking back to it, this was always a big sticking point for people because they were scared of gaining the obsolete parts or obsolescence inventory and it really growing because everybody says the same thing: body shops return parts. And while I think that's true and false at the same time, um, there's definitely a thing in policy that you've got to put in place, or it can get you in trouble and get out of hand really, really quick. So when you're communicating that fee code up front and setting the stage, are you doing that throughout the time with your client, or are you just doing that up front when you sign them on, so to speak?
So with there being a digital footprint, you can actually put notes in there to let them know before they place an order, hey, just be aware that this part may not be returnable, or and don't leave any gray areas. So I wouldn't even put man there. This part is not returnable. It might be a floor pan that gets damaged real easily. It might, and there's stickers that come on parts that say when this part is open, you cannot return it. Don't give the manufacturer
Right.
any room to want to deny that, because it's not in their best interest to take the parts back. So I think just communicating. Uh, Back when I first started, everything was through a fax, and you'd have to call it back. Now everything is digital, pretty much. I mean, you have your mom and pop shops that, still are old school, and I'm totally fine with doing business that way. But even calling them, letting them know, hey, please be aware, this part is not returnable. This part may be this many days out. Worst thing is for me, pet peeve of mine is when you don't tell somebody when something is returnable, or how long it's going to be on an order. That could be an issue. If you have the ability to communicate up front, they can communicate with their customer. It just leaves everybody in a better place, to be honest with you. But utilizing return. So we actually use PartSci for Hyundai. I know Kia, Genesis uses it. So they have a special order cleanup report. If you run that report, it will let you know anything that's at risk of going over 45 days. And then when you submit that back, you get 10 days to send it back. There should be no excuse why you get caught in the middle. And if you do have one where you give somebody a get out jail free card, that's really where your 2% obsolescence should come in. So we try to do the same thing with the guest that comes in through our service department, but we also try to do the same thing for our wholesale customers just to be as fair as possible.
So I love it. And I think we could talk all day long about inventory management for sure. But I think that with the fee code in there, that pulls right into our second item. And our second item is the customer experience. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because I think the customer experience is key in tons of ways.
Yeah, I think when it comes to customer experience, it's how does the customer want to do business with you, right? Now, do they want to, because for some of these body shops, parts are just a necessity. You have to look at what's called opportunity cost. Are they wasting their time on parts when it might be a two-guy shop where they need to be installing the parts, painting the parts, putting them on, contacting the customer. So there's a lot that goes into it. To me, I think you just need to know who your customer is and what they're
Yeah.
doing. What
Yeah.
kind of shop are they? Are they a corporate shop? Are they a smaller? Are they a mechanical shop? Is the car stuck on the lift? So I think just have an open communication with them because, you might not think about it being down for 2 days or going over the weekend, but that can be a lift tied up for somebody, especially if it's like, wait, it's always that small part. And how that is, where it can be a clip, it can be a bracket, something like that, that's keeping a car from going home. So I think once you kind of show that you're willing to step it up, which comes back to what we were talking about, having a good relationship with your competing dealers, to where if you need to go pick it
Yeah.
up for them, that's really where it's critical. So I think just knowing how they want to communicate, how do they like to do business? Do you have their best interests at heart? And sometimes it's telling the truth, and that is really hard to say. But if you can be honest and say, hey, I can't get to this dealership to pick up this part for you, but this is who has it, they're extremely thankful and they know that you're looking out for their best interests. So,
I found out early on in my career, I'm sure you did too, because I'm pretty sure you and I've had this conversation over the years. But when you lie to them and try to make up something, that's not the truth, that gets you in way more trouble than just being upfront about it. And I think that customer experience is way better for them when you are upfront with them. If you don't have it, or it's on back order, or it's unavailable, like whatever it is, I feel like that they're more apt to understand and work with you than if the other way happens where you lie to them. It ruins the relationship right out the gate.
yeah, you can't.
I feel like that's the lesson that we all should have learned at 8 years old that we never did. Is that like anytime you lie, the penalty is 10 times worse than the truth.
Yeah, because you have got to make up a lie to cover up the next lie to cover up the next. Like it just tidal waves on and on and on.
Yeah, and it's a house of cards that if they talk to one other person that doesn't know the lie, and
There you
then
go.
all of a sudden the whole thing falls apart,
Well,
and
so
that's
think of
that's a great philosophy.
if you think of it too from our standpoint, when we were competitors, um, if I told some lie to a customer to try to cover my tracks and just say they called his store and he doesn't tell the same story, now who really looks bad? And I lose a customer. and probably would lose multiple customers on that because in the area that we're at, there's a lot of corporate accounts um, that you're not just losing one.
It's not even corporate. It's the mom and pop shops. With a lot of these shops being bought out from corporate,
Yeah.
that's what gets you. I mean, they remember, and then they tell everybody else. Like, say if they go into a big corporate setting and they know you lied to them 3 years ago, they don't forget that. We don't do
Yeah,
business with them because
that's so true.
of that one time that they lied to us. And like you said, they call another dealership. Oh yeah, everybody has that except that one place that you called. That's not going to turn out too well.
Yep. Yeah. I can only imagine what happens. And, they call Jacob and they're like, yeah, I just talked to Cliff. And Jacob's like, oh, the guy that gets stuck on the leg press machine. And then it all goes to Jacob after that.
Well, I understand the leg press machine because I did try to see Cliff jump over a IKEA desk. And I say IKEA because it's not the biggest desk. I mean, we're not talking about a big oak desk. So, and Cliff, I hope you don't mind me
It's
giving you a hard time, but I think he thought he was still 22 years old, and he tries to. We have the service manager, Cliff's the service director, and our fixed ops director. I could jump over this desk, no problem. Now, mind you, height wise, he's good, but he's not thinking the depth of this desk being about 2 feet. I don't know what his shins look like, but I remember when he was working there, what they look like. Is there any skin left on those shins, Cliff?
Let's be fair to everyone listening and everyone that's in any either room. I almost made it over there. Now,
yeah, because that matters.
and if you could have seen this thing, like I flipped it upside down. Really don't know how I landed on my feet. Thankfully, I landed on my feet, but it flipped it upside down. I flung everything out of it. And if you could imagine for just 1 second, everyone dispersing out of the room with the exception of me.
Probably crying from laughter would
No,
be
for
my
sure.
I
guess.
called it secondhand
For sure.
embarrassment. That's what I felt. I was like, oh,
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 wow. You got the embarrassment shockwave, Jacob?
yeah.
That's great.
That one hurt. It might have
I'm
been a
so
little
happy for
cringe.
him. I gotta leave the room.
Oh, I love it.
Awesome. That's awesome. So let's talk about number three because we kind of touched on it in there just a minute ago when we were kind of touching about, hey, picking up those small pieces, getting the job done for our wholesale customers. But number three is focus on value. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on the value side of it.
So I know me and you have talked about this, Cliff, but there's three things they often say you can be, right? You can be the fastest, the quickest, right? You can be the best or you can be the cheapest, but you can't be all three. So when it comes down
Yeah.
to it, you have to pick, right? What you want to be. My saying is, I don't want to be the $5 haircut because you know what you get at the end of the day when you look in the mirror when you go home. You look at Cliff right now. You get the $5 haircut, right? Does that look like a $5? That don't look like a $30 haircut. I mean,
There's no $5 here, buddy.
but it's really just taking care of people, right? So I may not be the cheapest, but I want to be competitive, and with that, you have to look and see what does it take to run your wholesale business. You should have a line in the sand that says we don't pass this, right? To be successful, we have to maintain this certain percentage. Now, if you're kind of giving it away and you're trying to get everything fast, that might work for the short term, but for the long term, it doesn't. But creating value goes a lot further than that too, because like we talked about opportunity costs earlier, for the customer. Are you creating a value that says, let me see if I can price match these parts? Let me see if I can help you a little bit more on this side, because that's one phone call extra they don't have to make. And if you've ever looked at an insurance estimate, they are scary. They want you to call this place in Miami, then you got to call Colorado to get the fender, and then they don't want to do all that, right? They had their relationship with you. If you can make their job easier, and they know when you call that you're willing to go above and beyond and maximize their dollar and take it the furthest, we're more of a marathon dealer. I want the relationship to be there. So when we're focusing on value, it's more than just monetary, right? It's the value is like is in time, right? So you've got people that value two different things. You have the guest that says, I have the money, I don't have the time, and you have the guest that says, I have the time, I don't have the money. So just really knowing who you're working with to me is critical. And I mean, there's not a cookie cutter way of doing it, but obviously more volume is going to yield you different things. Having different brands, even we sell at a different discount. So just kind of knowing like what value you bring to the table. I mean, because like you said, you're paying for the experience. You're paying to get the bright part the first time. Um, so if you got your part for next to nothing, but then you had to wait 2 extra days because the guy looking it up has never looked it up before, that's one thing. I actually have a wholesale guy, a wholesale manager, that does a great job for us. And he actually came from a body shop, so he understands what turn times are. Working with insurance companies, what do they accept? Is there any extra money for you to ask for this, to ask for that? So he kind of gets how important it is. So having somebody that has that relationship with the guest, that whenever they call to order something, to me that's where the value is. So, and I think we're all looking
Yeah.
for value, right? And our brand is kind of known to be a value brand, right? This is not Mercedes. You're not paying for McLaren, but you want to get a good product for a fair dollar, and you want to be treated right. And I think no matter what you're selling, you want to make somebody feel valuable. So if they can come in and leave and at the end of the day say, hey, they do it the right way, and I enjoyed that transaction, that's what it's all about.
The scary thing for me is, and you and I could have the conversation about the multiple people that we know that have built their business on pricing. And I think certainly for your business, you've not built your business on being the cheapest. You're not. I don't think you offer the lowest discount. You built a business on providing a great experience and a great value for the customer. So I love it. Great. Let's talk about number 4. Kind of building here, building a little block here, is building strong relationships with the customer.
Yep.
And so we kind of brushed a little bit, but um, to your point, we were kind of talking about this earlier, but you got to know the customer because you were out there doing it. And the same for me when I grew up in it was building the relationship with them where I knew them, they knew me. And so when I said I couldn't find it, I meant I couldn't find it or it wasn't available. When they said they needed it, I understood they needed it, and it wasn't just them crying wolf. So I think the relationship there, um, again, love to hear your thoughts on building that relationship.
Well, we talk about where I started at, and one of them was being a parts driver, and I cannot tell you how many relationships I still have from when I used to be the guy that was delivering the part. Because what I tell people,
Yeah.
you are the face of the dealership when you drop that part off, right? Everything could go
Yep.
wonderful, especially with an electronic order. You go drop something off, you get a bad experience. That is now what you are left with, right? It's like taking the last bite of a filet mignon and you eat gristle, right? All you're going to think about is that last bite that you took. So I think really kind of starting from the beginning, developing, treating people with respect, starting off that way, because somebody, they had to start somewhere too. And I cannot tell you how many managers of body shops that I work with that they were the person intaking the part. I was the person dropping it off. We made small talk. We still catch up. I think getting to know who your customer is, right? Because you might have a conversation about the football game, right? And you might talk to a guy who's not interested in football at all, but he wants to talk about, you know, his daughter and how she's doing, or what's going on with him, or and sometimes it comes even a little more interpersonal where they might be going through things themselves and just kind of saying, hey, how are you, are you feeling better? And people know you care about them, and it's really just building a relationship. But it goes beyond, to me, just a customer to dealer standpoint. Even the dealer to dealer, you have to build that relationship too, because if I have to do business in a way that's not ethical, I don't want to do the business at all. So I'm going to treat everyone with respect, because to me, that's what I would like to have happen. And like you said, Christian, I mean, back to when we were 8 years old, the old golden rule, treat people how you want to be treated, but it goes so long. And I cannot tell you, there's other dealers where the parts person has left and went to a body shop and remember how we treat them. And they're calling your dealership now because they want to do business. And then once you get your foot in the door, all it takes is a foot, and you're doing it the right way, that will spread like wildfire. And it spreads fast
I
too.
always I always found it rewarding to find out about their families, to find out who they were. I think of one customer that I remember that his kid ended up playing football with my oldest son, like just building those relationships. And even now, from time to time, we still text back and forth and try to catch up on families and stuff like that. These are long-term relationships. And I could go further to there's a couple of shops that I remember, when you were saying that some of their personal stuff, like you get involved in some of their personal lives and even kind of help them through some of their trials and tribulations. And I don't know, it's, I understand we're selling parts, but in the end, like we can make better people. We can be a part of that.
I love
Yeah,
It
I
that,
doesn't
man.
think
have
that
to be
that's if there was one of, I mean, you guys have already brought up some really great points. I think you have one or two left, but if there was one lesson for all you parts managers out there that are trying to grow the wholesale business or are thinking about getting into the wholesale business, if there was one thing I think that I see, parts departments, service departments, essentially just the dealerships in general, this thing that these guys just talked about is the most underestimated power that you have as a business is the power of the relationship. And I think that when people come to wholesale, they think about it as super transactional, but man, there's a lot of people on the other side of that transaction. And I think that probably one of the reasons Jacob's so successful is because it's clear that he's customer first and not just customer for the gross profit. It's customer for the good of the customer. And there's just that, just to let you guys know, this little thing you guys did for the last 4 minutes absolutely blew me away. So that's
great.
pretty impressive. Good stuff.
It's great. Well, all right, let's keep going. Number 5 on the list is I don't even know how I want to categorize this one. I may call it just AR, and then we'll kind of expound on that. Uh, but it's taking ownership of the department's your responsibility. Um, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jacob, just because I want to get your perspective because I think you have a great perspective on this because we talked about in a previous episode that it's not the world's against me mentality, but that I take ownership of it and I'm in control of everything. So, uh, yeah,
Well, we're talking about external customer service, right? We've talked about that tonight, but the AR thing is internal customer service, right? The people you work with, um, they're more than just the accounting staff. Having relationships with, the accounting department, to know that you're not there just to make a sale, you're there to see it from cradle to grave, really. Because at the end of the day, if you don't get paid on the part you sold, guess where that comes out of? Straight out of net profit, right?
that's
And if you really, there's a couple of ways to do business, but I know some even take it out of the cost of sales, right? So you might even take it off your gross too. So you might have worked so hard to pick that up, and then you might have a shop that you write off $5,000. That is absolutely gonna just a kick right in the teeth. So what we do, we have a process that we don't wait until the end of the month, right? Because what's the busiest time of the month for everybody? The end of the month, right? So we say on the 15th, we call it look ahead and anticipate, right? It's a winning way that you can really use in all aspects of life. But look ahead, say what is coming up at say like 60 days in our dealership. It's considered to be aged, right? So after 60, so we look at okay, 30 days, 45 days. I mean, heck, even 20 days, right? Are you doing what it takes to collect on that AR? And it works too. And if you have to be intentional about it, you can't just let it happen by chance. We last month wrote off $0, and we had $600,000 in sales, right? So, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but that is insane to have that
yeah,
because the margin on wholesale is not very big. I mean, in our market, it's probably hanging around 13-14%, right? Unless you're just doing a lot of mechanical sales. But collecting on the ARs, if you get a bad check, collect on the money. Um, you should know to, hey, when you drop off a part, no pay, no part. But it's these customers that you've had for long term that may have had something, and it could be something real simple. Maybe they didn't know the email address to send it to, but you had the relationship, right? So, Cliff, I know you would agree with me because we've talked about this. Do you want your AR person calling and saying, you guys owe us money, and if you don't pay by this time, you're cut off? Or do you want to call, have the conversation because we already had the relationship and say, hey, just a heads up. I see this is coming up. I don't want anything to happen. I value the relationship. Maybe we missed something. So, not be accusational, but give them an opportunity to show their side of it. And you would be surprised some of the reasons that come back where you're like, oh, that was a simple misunderstanding. It was our fault. We gave you a bad email address.
One of the things I found more often than not is that they're not trying to skate away with not paying you. That there is something like that. Like wife thought that especially with mom and pop's places, but wife thought that she was paying the bill and it didn't get paid or whatever. There's a wrong mailing address. Something catastrophic may have happened. Like who knows? There's a lot of different scenarios there. I've also found it true with the corporate ones too that it didn't get pushed up the chain the right way or however that plays out. But unless you have, again, the relationship you were talking about, but I also think the ownership of it especially from the managerial standpoint, that I'm taking ownership. This is my client and this is my customer, and I'm going to collect the money. And however that looks, whether it's a charge account or whether it's a cash account.
I think that's a lot of
That's
respect
great.
from multiple people when you do it that way. You know what? And
Yeah.
this is funny. We talk the electronic age. If you don't put a repair order in right, guess what? It doesn't populate for them. And because maybe you fat fingered something, you don't want to go in there finger pointing. So, and I say that because I've been there and I've done it. And do not make the same mistake I have. Let me be the one that learned the lesson.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, the last thing, and this kind of sums up everything, and this is really kind of my favorite one, um, but it's being available, making yourself available. I think that that's the thing is we think that we can't we want to sit in an office and be tucked away, but making yourself available on every level is key to wanting to be successful in any avenue, but especially with wholesale.
No, I would agree. And, there's different levels of communication. If I'm talking to you face to face, right, you expect the communication to be pretty quick, right? If you call me on the phone, you might expect a couple of rings, a text message. It might take a little bit longer. Maybe when I see it, an email. I mean, heck, I might see that for 15 minutes, right? Depends on what you're doing. But just knowing how your client base wants to communicate, right? Making yourself available, having direct lines, having dedicated personnel. Some parts departments are maybe not be as big as others. But once you do that, you really kind of bring the value in you that they know, hey, if I call up there, I'm not going to have to call 20 times because they may forget to call back or might have something else come in or a tech walk in, which may get you, but really kind of helps you with the follow up too. Because, like we said, having that clear communication, I mean, communication, we can say it 100 times, but it's just so important because that's what's missing today is everything's electronic. You can fill out everything, but to be able to make that phone call when somebody calls and to be there, we have a dedicated line that you can ring into, so that way you don't have to go. We call it specialist, right? So what we've done is we realize not everybody has the same personality in our parts department, right? Our tech guy might be great at the tech counter, but he may not be the right guy for the wholesale customer, right? So
Right.
it's really just finding somebody who values that relationship, that is available. You, as the manager, if they call, I will answer any phone call that comes in. If I see the phone ringing, I answer it myself, even to this day, right? And there's times when you
I
have to make yourself unavailable, but for the most part,
But I
you got to be there.
there's a lot of managers out there that don't want to make themselves available to their employees, let alone to a customer. And I think if you're really wanting to grow a wholesale business, that you need to decide on what's going to be the face. What do you want your business to look like? What's the vision of it? And then what's the face of it? As the manager, I want to be the face of it, and I want to be available for anyone. So I love it, man. This has been fantastic.
I agree. I agree. I think we covered a lot. One thing I would recommend, though, that we touched on a little bit is make sure you have the right customer mix, right? Don't fall in love in only the body shop game, right? You would be surprised how many mechanical shops don't even realize that you exist out there or that you're an option or that you can be as competitive as you can be. And that's an untapped market. So there's a couple of programs out there that are utilized that we utilize that people like to use. Don't, yeah, you want the corporate account, but the mom and pops, I mean, they're the bread and butter, right? So it's a good mix, right? If you look at the pie chart, right? You don't want your pie to be one whole entire color, right? Have a good mix, and I think you'd be surprised. It's a very, very small world when it comes to that business, that a lot of people know a lot of people, and a lot of people may kind of bounce here and bounce there. But one thing that can be consistent can be you, right? And what you provide. So you're doing it the
Well, I
right
think
way, and it's going to turn out good.
you said the last one, just be available. So awesome, awesome stuff. Well, let me summarize them real quick, and just go back through our list real quick. Number one, we had inventory management. Number two, we had the customer experience. Number three, we had focus on value. Number four, we had building strong relationships. Number five, we're going to put kind of a AR/ownership. And then number six, we want to be available, make ourselves available.
That is an amazing list, fellows. So this was a content heavy episode of Parts Hold. So Jacob, we have you to thank for that. This was absolutely an amazing episode. If it's all right with you, we'll probably send you some swag so you can look as cool as Cliff and I,
Yeah, there you go.
and wear your Parts Hold stuff all over the place. And we hope you come back and chat with us again. But yeah, you didn't disappoint. You were as advertised, my good man. So so you did a great job. I hope this was as much fun for you guys as it was for me. This was great. So
Thoroughly
we
enjoyed
should
it.
do it again. I also think there's more Cliff stories, Jacob. I
Oh,
know you're holding back on me a little
I've
bit.
got a lot of Cliff stories. Look, and they're only going to get better as time goes on. So
I can. Oh, they age like fine wine, just
Yeah.
fine wine. But that's gonna do it. We'll see you guys next time on Parts Hold.
Here to fill the order.